buckle up, because it's going to be a long ride. It's going to be a wild ride. Nobody cares, but we're going to tell you anyways. This is Popcorn Chats.
Okay, what's up everyone? Welcome back to Popcorn Chats. I'm Katie.
And I'm McKay.
And this week we're talking about the new Hulu series, The Girl from Plainville, starring Elle Fanning, talking about this messed up individual. No offense, but also offense. You told somebody to kill themselves, so I feel like it's okay to talk badly about this person. Michelle Carter. The series is based on a true story about the teenager Michelle Carter. She's not a teenager anymore. It's crazy because she is our age. Like she was graduating high school when we did. When all this went down. So yeah, basically, if you don't know the story, I don't know why you would be listening to this episode, but Michelle Carter was tried for manslaughter of her boyfriend, Conrad Roy. Basically, she texted him telling him to kill himself and like encouraging him to do so. Basically, the show is kind of about these detectives trying to find her motive and us as an audience wondering about that too. And spoiler alert, it hasn't gotten to this part really as a big reveal in the show yet, but it's because she wanted to be like Leah Michelle, because she really loved Glee. And if you don't know the tragic story behind that, baby, that's a whole other thing.
It was a whole host of things. Like this, I think that was part of it. The documentary, I prefer much more than this fictionalized version of it. HBO has a documentary called I Love You Now Die, and I'm pretty sure it's 2 parts. An incredible documentary. I watched it when it first came out. Very fascinating. Gets into like the nitty gritty of the case, which I would highly recommend that if you've watched the show, go and watch that as well, because I think it gives you way more information than the show can obviously show, because they have to like make this entertaining, where in the documentary it's just laying out what happened.
And I did want to watch that in anticipation for this episode. I just ran out of time. Since we're covering the show, I like prioritize watching all 5 episodes that are out right now. But 2020 also did an episode on it too. So, but I know that you've spoken very highly of the I Love You Now Die on HBO. So I think I want to watch that, because I know people are saying that it's interesting to kind of see what is fictionalized and what isn't. And I do want to get into a conversation a little bit about this trend in Hollywood currently. I mean, it's always kind of been a trend to do like biopics and things based on real events, but lately it just seems like there is a lot of like, I mean, we know that pop culture is hugely obsessed with like true crime and all those types of podcasts and serial killers, and lots of stuff is coming out about like being based on true stories. And I don't know how I feel about that, especially like when it's dealing with something like someone's death and like suicide. I just think it's a little bit of a touchy subject, obviously.
Yeah, I don't feel as bad about us talking about it on this podcast here, because
same.
It's it's a show. If it wasn't a show, we wouldn't have ever talked about it. I think where a lot of people's beef lies is with true crime podcasts, and those people on their podcasts pulling random unknown cases out of nowhere and like highlighting them and not talking to families, not talking to friends, and spinning their own narrative to make their own podcast. And I think that is like fucked up. The more that I think about true crime podcasts, like I used to listen to a lot of them, but I haven't listened to one in years. And I do think that certain cases, obviously, like this one was highly publicized. Like I feel like this one, everyone knows about it. Like, yeah, that doesn't make it any easier for the families, but like the media attention was insane to this case, where like some of these like little small town murders that get brought up that these true crime podcasters go digging for to like find one that no one has talked about, and then like don't take into account the family or the victims themselves, like that is kind of fucked up. Even like some of the people that are survivors, and the people do stories about them, and then the survivors like I see on TikTok are like, this is literally not true, and they just did like a whole episode claiming to like know everything about this case in my life. So I feel like in this being like a fictionalized drama show, I don't feel like us speaking on that is as bad, because everyone knows about this case. So I don't really think we're bringing anything new to it.
No, definitely
and
not.
Also, we're not necessarily talking, I mean, yeah, we're obviously going to talk some about, like, the actual case and, like, the people themselves, but it is, like, our focus is the show itself and how they took this case and made it into a show. But I just want to preface that Conrad's family was not involved, and that they asked to see the scripts, and they were not allowed to see any of the scripts, and that their biggest, like, concern was that Michelle was going to be defended in this show. I don't think she has so far. I think she still looks,
No.
she looks like horrible to me.
Yeah.
Viewership. So I don't necessarily think I don't necessarily think they're like trying to defend her, but we'll see how it boils down and if they like do try to take an empathetic turn towards her. But I do think it was interesting that his family was not involved, which like I get, because like really that like as a creative person to have like a victim's family like that in your email on every draft, like that would just be like, I feel like almost an impossible process to create a show.
Because unfortunately, like both sides do have a bias, and if they consulted Michelle or her family or anyone, you know, it would be bias in her direction. And if they consulted with the family, which it would have made more sense to do so and maybe been a bit of a courtesy to allow them to read the script. And if they did have suggestions, like note those. Just me as a creator, like that's what I would have done. Yeah, I mean, if you're like just taking the case and making a show based on the case and then claiming at the beginning that there are fictionalized parts for dramatic effect, I don't think you're really doing anything wrong. And they probably just wanted to avoid bias. We've talked about before when things are handling real people and things that actually are based on true events. It's kind of, oh fuck, I just lost my train of thought. Woo, that baby went far, far away. Wow, mid-sentence too. Can we do a check-in?
Sure. I'm fine. How are you?
I'm also fine. I have a UTI, so I'm drinking a vodka cran.
That is fucking tragic.
That's it. I'm casting my feature film, Bittersweet Nostalgia. I'm currently in that process, and I have to show you one of the self-tapes I received. Like, it's Jamie. When I saw it, I was like, that's Jamie.
Oh my
That's
god, I want
him.
to see it.
Yeah, short check-in today. We don't have to talk much about what we're doing, but it is ironic because my girlfriend came here this past weekend or whatever, and I made her bring my Glee DVDs.
Oh my god.
I made her go to my parents' house and grab all my Glee DVDs because I have all the seasons on DVD, obviously, because I was a Gleek back in the day. It's not on any streaming services right now. So I asked her to bring them from my parents' house, LA, and we have a DVD player, so we're like rewatching it. And also, another crazy tidbit is, yeah, it got taken off of all the streaming services. My roommate Shelby and I both used to be Gleeks, and so we're like rewatching it because there's really like no shows that we're into right now, so we're just rewatching Glee. It's so bad. Oh my god. But also today, Shelby texted me and said that she saw Kevin McHale at the gas station. And if you don't know who Kevin McHale is, he plays Artie, who's in the wheelchair in Glee. And she saw him at the gas station and she rolled down her window and said, "Are you Kevin McHale?" And he said, "Yeah." And she was like, "Oh my god, that's so cool. Nice to meet you." And he said, "Nice to meet you." And she drove away.
Aww. That's nice that he was, like, nice.
Yeah. Corinne and I saw Connor Franta on our hike the other day. He's, like, an internet influencer. He used to date Troye Sivan.
Sorry, I haven't
Girl
had a
from
chance to
Plainville.
greet the cats since I got home.
It's
I feel
okay.
bad because I came in, I had a bunch of shit to unpack. Because I had to get all my cake stuff for my parents. So I didn't even get to greet them. I feel when I text Corinne to ask her about like what keys she wants and stuff, I'm gonna tell her, I'm like, I promise that I don't think that you're incompetent. It's just that I am so anxious about me leaving them that the notes are going to be excessive. And they just have like random shit. Like I have a doorstop on the bathroom door right now and she might be like, why is that there? It's like, because Aria locks herself in the bathroom if it's not there. She literally closes the door on herself and then she just sits in there and cries. And then I open the door for her. And then she comes out. And then like 10 minutes later, she does the same shit. So I finally put a door stopper in there.
She knows. She doesn't care. You saw her fucking 2-paragraph long text message about, "You can pick me up if you want, but I can walk if that's easier." She's the
Dude,
same
that was
way,
a long walk.
it's all good.
That was a really long walk.
I
That was
know.
like an 8-minute drive.
I was like, "You're not walking." And she's like, "It's really short. It's only like 45 minutes. I'm like, "You know." Yeah, more what I was talking about before, not like covering it on the podcast. I don't think that's problematic, but I've just had like trouble recently. Writers and creators taking true events, true things that happened, and fictionalizing them and then making them into a show. For me, I don't understand why you can't just make a story, make a show, and not attach it to real people with like real names, and then just tell a story about it. And then if people are like, this seems a lot like this real event, is this based on this? Then you can be like, yeah, it's inspired by that. But then you're not like claiming to know all this shit, because we talked about like with Spencer, which that's a little different, you know, but we don't like it when people are like adding to a story, like creators adding to a story. This is the train of thought. It's come back around. I remember when we appreciated about Spencer that the creators of that film and Kristen Stewart and everyone involved was like, we're not claiming to know anything that has never been unearthed before. You know, this is all public info, and we're just kind of telling a story within that. That's all good and fine. The trend in Hollywood lately to take real scandals, real crimes, real deaths, whatever. Like, we have The Dropout with Amanda Seyfried. We Crashed with Anne Hathaway and Jared Leto. We have Inventing Anna. We have Pam and Tommy.
That one's
There's
fucked.
just a lot of stuff. Yes, too much dick, bitch.
Why does The Dropout need multiple versions? Because there's also a movie being created. The Jennifer Lawrence is supposed to star as what the fuck is her name? Elizabeth Holmes. Like, why do we need a TV show and a movie of this scam artist?
Yeah, well, it's weird because the same thing kind of happened with the Ted Bundy thing, like back in, what was that, like 2019,
Yeah, where there were
when,
so many.
like, the Zac Efron film came out, the Ted Bundy tapes, Netflix docuseries, and it was all Netflix, so it's like they knew what they were doing. They released it all at once. It's a touchy subject, and I don't even feel like I have the knowledge or like ability to speak on it and fully have like a definitive thing. But I'm just saying, if it were me, and I feel this way because I'm a creator, I'm a writer, when I watch things, I watch them as a writer and what would I have done. Oftentimes, like when I was watching Pam and Tommy, I was like, why did you have to attach their names to this? Like, it literally could have, because then they come out and say, Tommy has come out and said, this is completely off base. And then you have people getting upset, and like, why not just write, if you're gonna fictionalize it and have that disclaimer at the beginning that this is fictionalized, certain aspects are fictionalized, why not just make the whole thing fucking fiction? Change the names of everybody, because in this too, like, certain names are changed. Like, Susie or whatever is actually a girl named Alice. So I don't know. I struggle with it, and I was just wondering what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I think more so, well, one, when you're asking like why, I think it's because money and guaranteed audience, because people hear that and they have name recognition for it, rather than, like, when you hear Pam and Tommy, and people who remember seeing that in live time are obviously going to check that out. Like, they're going to be excited to see that. Where if it's not advertised that it's that story, might not pick it up. This is gonna just sound straight up problematic, but I don't really care when they mess with like bad people. Like, fictionalizing already like bad people. Like, I kind of feel like Michelle Carter, if she's looking bad in this, I don't really give a fuck. But I do think that when there are like victims involved, and like then I'm like, what about like Ted Bundy's victims' families who watch like this glamorized version of him on TV? Like with Spencer, I was like, I don't want them to be trying to change who Princess Diana was to like be edgy or like fit this new like open day and age. You know how we're like, we thought at one point like they might have been trying to give her like a bit of like an LGBTQ leaning line, and I'm like, if she wasn't like that, don't put that in there. So I don't know. I think it's a delicate balance when Hollywood's doing it, and honestly, some of it's done well, some of it's not. And we're never going to stop having movies like this or TV shows like this because they love to make them. I think it's just important that when you're watching this, you don't walk away from watching this TV show and not looking up anything else, that then you think that you know everything about the case and that you're speaking it out as fact when it's not.
From my perspective, it's like fiction supposes life anyways, and everything that is fiction, even though like high fantasy, like fiction, everything is drawn from real life. You know, that's how we create stories and characters. It's all drawn from the human experience, which is rooted in truth and actual events in one way or another. You know, even Game of Thrones is rooted in like the British monarchy and kind of draws from that. And then like the interpersonal relationships are probably from drawn from real life too. So it's important to be mindful of that, especially when you're watching something that is based again on someone's real life and death and someone's like wrongdoings. And I don't know if everybody necessarily is mindful about that, but you can't control that. So it is what it is. I don't know. I don't want this episode to be too like serious or whatever. And like, we are just talking about the show, and there are definitely things about this show that I appreciate. And yeah, I think it's just an interesting perspective that we're coming from, because you, like we've said, you've been aware of this case a lot longer than I have. You saw that documentary when it came out. I think my earliest memory of this case was I saw screenshots of the text messages between them on Facebook or something circulating around. And I don't know if that was back in 2015 when this all went down, or if that was later, like when I was in college. But I do remember seeing that, and then I remember you telling me about the girl who was inspired by Glee to commit a fucking felony.
Which, that's the other thing that I think this case makes for like, besides the fact that this case is just like bonkers in so many ways, of like the Leah Michelle thing, and like it's the case itself and how it was tried, because as it's mentioned multiple times in this show, like assisted suicide isn't illegal. So this was like the first time that someone has ever been convicted like on this charge, like in this kind of situation, and it kind of like set a precedent moving forward. Like if any cases like this come up again, this will be the case that is referenced, which is why, like, again, I don't feel like as bad about this one getting like a fictionalized version and like publicized, because it was so groundbreaking that this will be something that like will be referenced for years.
And at the end of the day too, like it spreads awareness, and it really does do a good job of conveying like the psychology of teenagers. I think it's a very accurate depiction of just being that age, honestly, and being super young and impressionable, but also having this like freedom to make adult choices. That can definitely create really messy situations, you know, like, and just for me, I have a personal kind of not connection to this case, but I was a huge fan of Glee, as we've talked about on this podcast before, and Corey Monteith's death hugely affected me. Like, I, at that time in my life, had never experienced loss really of any kind. My grandparents were all still alive at the time. No one close to me really had passed away. And when the news about his death came out, like, it felt like I lost someone close to me. And Glee, just as a show, had more of an effect on me than any other like form of media had ever had. I don't want people to get the wrong idea when I say this, but I can, in some ways, relate to Michelle Carter, and at least the character that Elle Fanning is playing. You know, every boy I had a crush on, I was listening to Glee songs and imagining that it was him singing them to me, you know, back in high school. And I wanted to start a Glee club. Michaela can attest to this. I was very impacted by this show. Like, I acted and did certain things and even said certain things that I took from the show, you know, because it was my favorite show, and I really saw myself in some of the characters. Obviously, I would never go to this extreme extent.
No, but I get what you're saying, though, that I think watching this too, and especially the part that like I can just understand how like in a teenager mindset, and like Michelle being a loner and an outcast and not really having friends, when she sees that what she's seen on TV is then that Rachel, whatever her name, Rachel in Glee, is like overwhelmed with support from people around her, that then she realizes like, hey, maybe that's how like I can get these friends to come back to me, or like get these people to like reach out to me. And she sees how that starts to work, and I think she realizes like this is, I think to her, she thinks that's the only way that she can get attention. As I'm watching that, it's like I can understand how like in that like age, and in like when high school you think that like there's nothing else outside of high school, and like this is the end all be all, and if I have no friends here, I'm never gonna like have friends anywhere. Not trying to justify her, but I do think that we just have to remember like she was, even though she was 18 when she was tried or whatever, like still 17, 18, you're not still making like rational decisions. people aren't making this irrational of decisions, but I think she had other shit going on in her brain. And who knows, maybe she is just evil. Like, there's also that too. She could just be like a horrible person. I don't know. Again, I think like what you said, how you could kind of see that with Glee. I can kind of see that with her trying to get attention from friends and like just trying to have a group of friends.
And I think too, at that age, I mean, that demographic, like teenagers, is the target audience for so much media and content that's being made, especially back then too. Like, that was the target audience for Glee. So like, media really affects you in a different way when you're that age. I think, like, I don't feel the way that I did when I was young and a teenager when I watch things, you know, like you really do look up to these people because they're older than you most of the time. And like Glee, you know, Michelle Carter is our age, so she would have been kind of watching Glee around the same time that I was. And like, for me, I was watching it like 8th or 9th grade, going into high school and watching like, oh, this is what high school is like, and this is, you know, the types of relationships that I want. And it's even more like crazy, and I can even relate to her a little bit more, like with the whole gay stuff going on here. And I did do some research because I was like, is this true, or is this part of like the fictionalized thing? But I personally, I mean, I remember really, really relating to Santana and Brittany and really, really liking them as characters and thinking about their relationship, I think a little bit more than my other friends who were fans of the show. I always kind of went back to like, no, I want to be like Rachel and Finn. Like, they're the main characters and that's how I want to be. And that's like a horrible way to think, obviously, and really sad for me to think about now, but it's true, you know. And watching this show, it's like, damn, I think the show isn't done yet, so I don't know what conclusion the show is gonna try to make about the whole, like, was she trying to get Susie's attention, or was she, who knows what this bitch was fucking doing. I'm not gonna try to get into her mindset because that's just a very difficult thing to do.
I was gonna say, even still, like, again, when you're saying, like, you can relate, once again, we still would never make these fucking decisions, but it is interesting to think about.
And I made some pretty horrible decisions when I was 17 and 18, but never would I have ever told someone to drink bleach.
Yeah.
Why don't you just drink bleach? Like, no, baby.
And again, I am kind of like, again, that was, I mean, how can I even say that was taken out of context? But I think, like, again, just like I Love You Now Die does just give, like, and again, we're not here to talk about that, but gives it like a whole overarching picture, because that gives like Conrad's side and like Michelle's side, and how from like Michelle's side, he was like always talking about how miserable he was and how he wanted to die and how he had these plans. Then he kept on like backing out or being like, I don't know how to do it. And so then finally, like, what her side claims and like prosecution was, like, finally she hit her limit, and then she thought that she was helping him out, which, like, again, this is like the fucking defense attorney's case,
Yeah.
which I'm not saying that that's like what it was. Again, she could just very well be pure fucking evil. Their defense of her, they were like, oh, well, then she was like, well, how can I help him out with this? So when she says like, just drink bleach, they said that she thought that she was helping him out by like giving him answers. Think that through before you send.
The show is kind of showing us as an audience what we can kind of already denounce from the situation, that she wanted her boyfriend to kill himself for attention. I think you can kind of assume that from this case, but that's a claim that can't really be proven anyways. But I think the show is kind of showing us how she's capitalizing on all of this attention.
Yeah, I definitely don't think the show is pro Michelle in any way, shape, or form, because so far there hasn't been like any sort of defense for her. It's solely been like, look at what she said. Like the one mirror scene when she's like singing in the mirror and practicing her speech and like Glee, and then she's like referencing Glee in the background. What the fuck? Like, like watching that, you're like, yeah, she just did it for straight up attention. So I don't think that, at least when Conrad's family said they hope that this doesn't defend her, I definitely don't think it's doing her any favors so far.
Oh no, definitely not. I think it's more of like a character analysis, and I would like to think that Elle Fanning, especially because she's like an executive producer on this, and she was probably being like compared to Michelle Carter because they do look very similar. I don't know what prompted Elle Fanning to want to pursue this project, but it feels more like a character analysis based on the facts that as the public already have on the case. It's not like they're going about it whereas like she's a misunderstood person and this is the real story. But yeah, that scene where she's singing in the mirror was excruciatingly long and super cringy. All the moments where she quotes The Fault in Our Stars at one point, which is just like very like ours was an epic love story or something. Like she quotes The Fault in Our Stars I think 2 times so far that I've been able to track in the show. Again, another film that was very prominent in the time where we were in high school and like representation of what love is and what love should be and how intense it can be when you're young, and like enviable relationships and relationships to strive for.
But like, is that, I don't know if I agree with that is out there for like us to watch, for like a relationship to strive for, because I don't know how watching that movie that looks envious of that.
Yeah, no, I don't think everyone is going to have that reaction, but I think when you're watching something like The Fault in Our Stars, you're like, damn, I wish someone loved me that much. Not everyone is going to be thinking like this, but I remember going to the theaters with my boyfriend at the time to go see The Fault in Our Stars and just not hoping that one of us would die, obviously. I remember at the end being like, I'm so glad we're both healthy and like we don't have to deal with that. But just, I don't know, maybe this is just me, but like I was very much about image in high school and wanting to have that like enviable relationship and that connection with somebody that was kind of like more mature than what's expected of like a high school relationship. And that was very much in Glee too, you know, these characters are getting married super young. Same with like One Tree Hill and lots of like media again that was directed at a very young audience, you know. It's like making these relationships that are teenage relationships very, very adult. And I think this is a very extreme example of the repercussions of that type of portrayal in the media.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just know that when we talk about like certain like media or like topics on things, and like even like One Tree Hill or shows like that are like very dramatized and like fictionalized, then when people are like, we shouldn't be showing our kids these because this is problematic or this is like not a good example of a healthy relationship. I'm sorry, I'm trying to be fucking entertained and I don't want to watch two people with good communication. I want to watch the tutor shy girl get with the toxic bad boy, have a school shooting where he runs into the building for her, she's pregnant and having their baby at their graduation, he's paralyzed years later, and then he's got his legs back and he's playing fucking trampoline basketball. Okay, and then he gets kidnapped by like the basketball mafia. I want to watch that. Okay? Let me have my fucking time. And even when I was a fucking 17-year-old, I knew that wasn't normal shit. So it's not my problem or the media's problem if weird-ass people like Michelle Carter can't tell the fucking difference.
That sounded like a presidential campaign that you're like running on that stance.
Thank you. That would be my stance. That would be that it's not my problem and it's not the media's problem that people can't tell fiction from reality. That would be my fucking stance because that drives me crazy. I'm like, you can't take the few examples of people who think that shit is okay and punish the rest of us. We're just trying to have a fun fucking time and make this life a little more bearable.
Yeah, I think it truly is like people like you who have a realistic view of the world and go to media for escapism. And I think now that I'm like more mature and not so much of a crazy pants in the brain, I also do that with media. But when I was like a young impressionable teen, the lines were a bit blurred with like media and reality for me. I very much remember watching shows like Glee and One Tree Hill and being like, oh, that's just what high schoolers do. That's what older people do. That's what people who really, really love each other, even though they're in high school and everybody says they're super young, that's what they do. They get married when they turn 18. They emancipate themselves.
They start clothing lines.
Right, like, I don't know what the difference between you and I is. Maybe there's probably several factors. You had an older brother to kind of show you realistically what being older was, whereas I was the eldest child and I kind of went through everything first, and my older siblings were the Glee characters and One Tree Hill. That's all I had to go off of like what the future was going to look like. And yeah, it's very, very interesting how media has like a psychological effect on people, and it's not consistent, and it's not consistent across every single teenager who's watching stuff. And so you're right, we cannot make decisions and censor media based on the extreme examples and the choices made by a few misguided teens. Yeah, I mean, it's a free fucking country, and if you make a poor decision based on something you watched on television where there's a disclaimer at the beginning, if it's based on true events, or if it's clearly like a fiction show, then that's on you. That's not on the people who made the show, because they're making it to entertain, not to influence people.
It's not education. It's entertainment. Right. And Michelle Carter obviously got those wires crossed.
Yeah, I have the quote from Fault in Our Stars right here. She said, "Forever within a numbered days." Like, what the fuck, bitch? And then how her sister is like, "Is that from Glee?" I'm like, that's so cringy, bro.
The sister is my fucking favorite because she is like, you are unwell. Straight up.
She's like, "You're ruining my
and
fucking
calls her
life."
Out. And I just think, what an opening. They really started the show out, like, in probably the best way that they could have, by Michelle going into her parents and being all like, Conrad died. And they turn and they're like, who's Conrad? Like, that is the best way to open this up. That right off the bat, we have her being super emotional and her family not even knowing that they were, like, together. Because so much of this relationship took place over text, and, like, it really wasn't, like, a known thing to the people in their lives, which is wild to me. So no wonder it came out of, like, left field for, like, Conrad's mom when his girlfriend shows up and is like, I loved him and we were going to spend our lives together. It's like, huh? I thought that was a great open.
It was a very good way to, like, set this up. And yeah, it's just weird. And I just can't imagine, like, being the parents in this situation and seeing those text messages and being like, oh my God, she told him to drink bleach. Like, how do you defend that in this situation? And all parties involved, I cannot imagine. I do feel for the mom. I don't know if there's, like, more information about her that makes her not a very good person, but
I don't remember much about Michelle's mom.
Conrad's mom.
Oh, Conrad's mom? Oh yeah, there's more. Or I don't know if we'll get in the show. More in the documentary. But yeah, I do like Michelle's parents to, like, be totally oblivious to this, and then to seeing these text messages and being like, my kid literally sent that to another person. Like, I would be like, literally, where the fuck did I go wrong? Because how did someone that I raised ever think that it was okay to encourage someone to do that and talk to someone in that way and think that any of this was okay?
Also, I feel like the show introduced Rob early on in the episodes, and then kind of he's, like, fallen off. But if I were him, I would have been like, this bitch is fucking crazy. Like, I would have been like, get the fuck out. Like, I don't know who the fuck you think you are. And this is a very, like, extreme case, but I think when people die, there are certain people who like to, like, hop on the train and get sympathy and attention from other people. Like, that is not unheard of. And I feel like that happens quite often. I think especially when a young person passes away. I've always found that to be incredibly cringy, like, disgusting and so strange. You know, like, you can be affected by somebody passing away that you didn't know very well. But, like, I don't know. It's just weird just the way she had that whole, like, benefit thing in her hometown. It's a little interesting. And then so everybody there is like, we love you, Michelle. And it's just like, no, bro.
And then her, like, going to go jump in the pictures, making the speech. And then when she's on the phone with the best friend and he's like, why are you having it there? And she's like, well, we could do it in your town, but, like, I don't think I get the deposit back. And then she gets off the phone and she's like, can we put down the deposit? It's like, you know what you're doing. And I do think that's so cringy. And all I could think about when I was watching the Homers for Conrad thing is how pissed I would have been if this was, like, us back in high school and if there was some random dude that came out of nowhere and was like, Katie was the love of my life, and, like, wouldn't even let me say, like, anything at a benefit for you when I've known you for over, like, almost our whole lives.
Yeah, here's the thing. This would never happen with you and I, okay?
No.
I would fight someone. I would be taking someone in a back alley and I would say, I know what you're doing and you can fuck right the fuck off and I will kill you and your family. So I don't like you. And Michaela didn't even like sports, so why are you fucking hosting a kickball tournament in your hometown?
That would be so true. That would be so true. You'd be like, you're a real fake one because if you knew Michaela, you would know that she wouldn't want to fucking run around on a field outside.
If you died, I would host a bar crawl in your honor.
I don't like the bars.
True, I would host an EDM concert festival.
Yeah, that'd be fun. And then you can, like, spray me out of a cannon. Like,
yes.
put my ashes in. Except on the tsunami drop, we change it to McKay. Boom. And I'm, like, out of the cannons.
That's how we spread your ashes.
Like, close your mouths, people.
Oh my god, we're dark. Yeah.
I would host a bar crawl for you. A bar crawl would be appropriate for you.
Yeah, I agree. How do you feel about the whole, because obviously this is, like, a very text-based case. There's, like, thousands of pages of text messages. How do you feel about the decision in this show to make all of that in-person dialogue between the two actors playing Conrad and Michelle? Because they easily could have gone, like, the text bubble on the screen route.
Yeah, I think I get what they were going for with that, and that it is a better medium to, like, watch rather than just have people, like, read the text messages. And I think it does give more, like, for the audience a chance to see them together, where, like, you wouldn't really have any scenes of them interacting besides the one beach scene in, like, what, the first or second episode or something?
And then the funeral. Her grandma's funeral.
Yeah, so I do get what they did there. However, I find those two together, I don't know the guy who's playing Conrad, what his name is. I find them very lackluster together, so I find myself extremely bored during those, like, text scenes that half the time, like, I'm on my phone during them. I'm like, can we just get back to present day? Because that's what I'm much more interested in. And, like, Michelle on her own, where, like, I don't particularly care for her and Conrad together.
Interesting. I appreciate the decision to make it in person, and I liked the moment where like the basketball scene where she gets a buzz in her pocket and then he's, like, showing up behind her, and then when I realized, like, oh, they're texting and she's just envisioning him being there. I appreciated that, and I agree that it makes for a more, like, dynamic scene to watch, because otherwise we'd be watching this show with just her, like, staring down at her phone or him staring down at his phone, and then, like, bubbles popping up, and it's like, I might as well just read the screenshots again, like, on Facebook, on a Facebook post or something. I do think that the actor who plays Conrad is very talented, and obviously I think Elle Fanning is very talented as well. I think that their chemistry, it reads like, you know, an adolescent relationship. It's not this hyper romanticized thing like we would see in Glee or One Tree Hill or something like that. It's awkward. Even their in-person conversation on the beach, it's very juvenile. It's very kind of cringy and, like, just awkward, and how two underdeveloped brains would converse. So I did appreciate that, and I agree with you that they're not super compelling, and I think it's also because during those scenes where they're just reading text messages back and forth, I mean, that's what they're doing, you know, like, they're just reading texts and waiting for the other person to respond, whereas a normal in-person conversation, that's not how people actually talk. It's like you're reacting to what they're saying and their facial expressions. And so I think the dialogue that we're seeing in person, but they're just reading their texts, it's very dry because at the end of the day, it still is a text. Yeah. While it doesn't make me personally empathize with Michelle Carter, and I think he would say the same thing, it establishes their relationship for what it was, you know, a text-based relationship. I think it just makes for, at the end of the day, a more enjoyable watch to have the two actors conversing in person and the other one kind of just appears when they start talking. And it also kind of shows that Michelle didn't like this dude that much. I think she cared more to be loved.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was, I don't necessarily think that it was even Conrad. I think it was just the fact that he was the one who gave her attention.
Right. And unfortunately, that's another thing I can relate to. It's like, I just need a boy to love me so that I feel okay, which is like so sad to think about, but I think I can, again, like I get this character and I think the way that they're portraying the story is very well done because, you know, I feel like I can understand, but obviously I don't understand her actions. I just understand her feelings. We dealt with it very differently. Michelle Carter and we dealt with this very differently. I think I hate her all the more because I can see myself in her. I don't necessarily look back on high school me very fondly. So, yeah, I can appreciate a show because it feels more authentic that way.
I had a few random notes about just the cringy aspect of so many things, particularly in the first couple of episodes, like the funeral, when like Michelle runs up and like gives Conrad's mom a hug, and like then when we see her like texting her, and then the like baseball game when she like went to jump in the picture and everything. There's just, it's like so cringy, but it's cringy like in a good way, you know. It's not like cringy like kissing booth. Yeah. It's cringy in the way that you're supposed to be like, oh my god, this is like so uncomfortable. How did she think that this was all okay?
And her not letting Rob speak at the homers for Conrad. Yeah. And just like even in the most recent episode when Lynn is at the Kmart where Conrad killed himself, like she pulls up her text thread with Michelle and there's just like so many messages from Michelle and she's like, I heart you and stuff. It's just like, that's so weird, bro. Like
I wouldn't even text your mom like that if like we've been best friends for a long ass fucking time and like I wouldn't even be doing that after this long of a relationship.
Right.
Like it's so weird. I do want to ask you, because we've covered other Hulu shows before where there are only like a few episodes out and then we have never, I mean, we don't like finish covering them on the pod. So then like in turn, we haven't ended up like finishing them. But are you going to finish this show even though we won't cover the rest of it?
Yeah, I was wondering that for myself. I don't know. I have had a very, very difficult time lately getting into shows in particular. I've been mostly just watching film recently. And then, like I said, Shelby and I are rewatching Glee. We tried watching Upload, which is an Amazon Prime original starring Robbie Amell.
Love him. The original Joshua
great.
Templeton. He would have been so superior over the crust of whoever that other dude was.
He really would. I didn't think that other guy was crust, but I would have really loved to see Robbie Amell in The Hating Game. But anyways, yeah, I tried watching that show. It was good. Like, there was nothing wrong with it at all. It's just like, I don't feel like I need to know what happens next. I just kind of am like, whatever. So I don't know. I mean, the only reason why I actually sat my ass down and finally watched it like yesterday and today was because we had to cover it on this podcast. I kind of spend my time doing other things. So I don't know. So I'm interested to see how they end it. And especially how Glee relates to it, you know. It is interesting to me.
I feel like the Glee references are probably almost done because I feel like that part's probably almost over, unless if they bring that up in the trial at all, but I don't know. I don't really feel like it will.
Well, I'm wondering if she had a reaction at all to Cory Monteith's passing, because she has that scene with Susie where they're talking about how Leah Michele and Cory Monteith just like paused their engagement or whatever in real life. So I am interested to see if Michelle Carter did have a reaction to when Corey Monteith passed away and what that reaction was.
Oh, like in the past, if they would show a flashback of that?
Right.
Okay, because I was going to say, you know, they showed her, like, already doing that, like, singing montage and, like, doing the speech. So I feel like that was, like, what they were going to touch on as far as that goes.
Yeah, I was just wondering if, like, because all we've seen so far is when Corey Monteith has been alive and her kind of romanticizing their relationship between Leah and Corey and Rachel and Finn, and then like the quarterback episode.
Okay, because I was gonna say I thought he was already passed when she was doing like that montage.
The part where she like sings.
Yeah.
With him. I loved that scene.
No, not that. The part when she's standing in front of the mirror and she's like crying and she's like copying Leah Michelle's monologue. Like, is that not after he already passed?
Yes, definitely. Definitely he had already passed at that point. I just would like a flashback to see, you know, if she had a reaction, what her reaction to that news dropping was. Because it seems like the show is going to have the reveal be like she was inspired by this situation and then wanted the attention of her friends. And now how the prosecutors are gonna take the route of all of her friends are Susie. She wanted the attention of all of her friends.
I'm interested to see what this show... I will keep watching, just because, like I said, I've been intrigued by this case for a while, and I'm most looking forward to, like, the court episodes, because she waived her right to a jury trial. Like, it was just the judge. So, again, like, something that, you know, not a lot of people do going into their cases. I am excited to see how, like, the trial plays out. Oh, now my train of thought is gone. Where was I? Oh, I'm interested to see how they show when they start communicating the way that, when we get to, like, just drink bleach. I'm interested to see if they're going to show that Conrad came to Michelle and said, hey, I don't want to be here. Or if they're gonna do something like that, like maybe she sees Corey Monteith dies and then she starts to like suggest things to Conrad. I'll be interested to see how the show plays that, because Conrad was already in a bad place without Michelle. So I'm interested to see if they'll show that. Not saying that like, oh, he would have done it anyways without Michelle, because like we can't know that, but I don't think Michelle put him in that bad place to start. I think she saw it and then took advantage of it.
Yeah, it's wild. It is a wild, wild story for sure.
So I don't even know how many episodes it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I was trying to figure that out too, and I wasn't seeing anything. I mean, I would assume like 8.
That's what I would assume so, but I feel like they have so much ground to cover if they try to cover it in like 3 more episodes. As soon as that one scene happened though, when Conrad and her were singing to each other, I was like, I bet Katie's loving this scene.
I was, because I just liked how his voice kind of faded in over Corey Monteith or Finn's. Again, I mean, like, I did that shit. Like, I pictured the boy that I had a crush on at the time singing to me, you know, or me singing with him, or us doing a duet. I would listen to Glee songs and just, like, picture this stuff. So obviously I wasn't like, now he needs to die because we need to follow the storyline. But yeah, I don't know. It's just interesting.
I just think this case is so wild.
And it's interesting that she was doing all this stuff when she was 17, but then she got tried as an 18-year-old. Like, the timing of that.
Yeah, I wonder how they got away with that.
And when you're 17, you can be tried as an adult in certain, I mean, when you're any age, you can be tried as an adult if you...
True.
Oh, bro, this UTI is fucking killing me. I hate my life right now.
I'm so sorry. That is garbage.
I used to never get UTIs until I started dating Corinne. I don't know what the fuck.
I don't know what to tell you.
All right.
Do you have anything else?
I literally don't. We need to figure out what we're doing with our lives the next... We're gonna do a Game of Thrones rewatch in anticipation for the August release of, what's it called? Dragons.
House of Dragon.
We're gonna be doing season rewatches and breaking down the seasons leading up to that. Super excited for that.
I cannot wait. In the near future, no fucking clue. So that's why Katie and I are going to sign off, and we're going to figure that out. But we will be back next week like always. So
we love you,
fucking Lilas.
Lilas.